Good evening and welcome to Door on Tour. Yes, it's not Door, as you can probably realise. It's Jay, and I'm going to be bringing you a bit of a preview of the Nottingham Forest versus Southampton match tomorrow evening, which is going to be a very exciting matchup and a really, really important matchup, as we all know, because Nottingham Forest and also Southampton sitting in the bottom three, Forest in 18th, Southampton in 20th. So both sides need the 3 points, and 3 points could get us out of that bottom three. So we're going to be talking to a Southampton fan in just a few moments' time. But first of all, I'd just like to welcome you all, as I say, to Door on Tour's preview for tonight for Nottingham Forest against Southampton tomorrow evening. So welcome, hello, good evening, good morning. It's good to have you, and it's also good to be back on YouTube because I've not been on for a little bit. But I am Door on Tour for an evening, so it's great to be here. And yes, I am not Door, as I say. So Claire, I hope you're doing well. The best Parker in the whole world, by the way, Claire is. Yeah, I'm not biased, but yeah, Claire's amazing. So good evening, Claire. Hope you're doing well. Now we're going to bring in the Southampton fan that is Liam Whitehorn this evening. So Liam, welcome to the channel. How are you doing?
Thank you. Not too bad, mate. Thank you very much for having me on tonight. It's a pleasure.
No, it's great to have you. To be honest, I didn't think I'd be here talking to you this evening, so I'm glad I am. I'm not going to be able to watch the match, unfortunately. Yeah, a bit of a change up. I'm not going to be able to watch the match tomorrow, unfortunately, because I'm working and I didn't manage to get onto it. But that being said, I'll be listening to the radio and I'll be tuning into Twitter for sure. But big game tomorrow. Obviously, you guys sitting rock bottom, and Nottingham Forest only just above you. How are you feeling about that? I mean, obviously, quite a bit of a heartbreaking result to have just a few days ago. And coming up against Nottingham Forest, maybe a team that are slightly out of where they should be, I think, considering the amount of money they spent in the summer and the players they brought in. But they did draw against Chelsea and really were quite unlucky to not win that game. So how are you feeling ahead of facing Forest tomorrow?
Yeah, I think, I won't lie, it's probably the most nervous I've been in a long time for a Saints game. Like, I think the importance of this game, even though it's only January, I think it's massive. We just need some confidence. And obviously, like you said, there was a bit of heartbreak on Saturday with Fulham. Second half, I thought we were fantastic. I really thought we were going to win the game. But, it's been typical of our season to concede late on with a set-piece goal. And it's just, we need to cut out on mistakes tomorrow and get a good performance in. But the problem is the confidence is low. And what I'm thinking is, with you lot having a great result on Sunday, I watched most of the game and I thought you were fantastic. So I'm like going to bring a bit more confidence into the game than us. So it's going to be a difficult game, but maybe with us being at home and your poor away record could help us out. But we've only won once at home all season. So I think it's going to be a really scrappy game, and whoever has that little bit of quality will get the result in the end.
Well, 2 points separating us, so anything really could happen. Obviously, Bournemouth having a tough evening as well. So 3 points for you would guide you out of the bottom three, 100%, and take you to 17th. 3 points for us would take us to around 14th, well, probably just below, probably 15th. So really, there's opportunities there. And I think getting out the bottom three for you guys would be so important. But I do have to ask the question. And before I do, I'm just going to quickly say hello to some people that are joining in this evening. Sonny D, I hope you're well. Chris, Colin, good evening. Gamer 316, yeah, Jay on tour. That's what it is tonight, but Dor wouldn't let me change the channel name. So far, tomorrow is the battle of the worst home team versus the worst away team. Yeah. And Forest, actually, out of every single team, and I think it might have just changed because of the Chelsea game, have got the worst record for shots on target per game. They're averaging about 3. Much better last game. But yeah,
you'll definitely get more tomorrow.
You'd hope though, wouldn't you? But as we say, we haven't won away yet, so we need to, get some results at some point. And shots on target, people take it for granted, but I mean, as long as we're getting shots in, you're going to convert more. But we haven't been doing that. So until the Chelsea game, I think that was a real turning point for us. So, but as well, after United, I think people went into a bit of a meltdown. Forest are going down. That's it. We're not going to do anything against Chelsea. 2 games we've got to pass on and then hope that we get something against Southampton and Bournemouth. But I think as a fan base, and perhaps the same for you guys as well, you do need to be more ambitious. I mean, Southampton have been in the top flight for quite a few years now. I don't know how many it is, but
yeah, I think it's this our 11th season in the Premier League in a row. So I think it's been happening for ages that we've been kind of in this situation. We've been lucky to not avoid relegation for the last 3 or 4 years, and I think karma's finally hit us where we're not really going in the right directions or the way when we want to go. Like we just keep going the same, buy young, sell on, and it's just not. It's kicking us in the arse really, and we got to sign some proper players who are going to get us goals and clean sheets. And I really hope they do that in January, but we'll just see. I think the way Forest improved in the summer, a lot of the players that I quite liked with Morgan Gibbs White and Dennis, I'd like to see. We don't see that at us with spending that type of money. You get what I mean? So it's difficult.
So what and who, or what or who, or both? What do you think Southampton, or who do you think Southampton need to change or bring in January? Because obviously January is a huge transfer window. There's no doubt. Us, Forest, and you guys at Southampton both looking for a forward player, maybe a couple as well. Forest going for a bit of an injury crisis at the moment, so obviously that's posing a huge problem for them, no doubt. What do you think Southampton really need to change in terms of their squad in order to improve in January, and also over the long-term success of the club? What do you think needs to change in terms of the strategy?
So I think a lot of people would definitely agree with me as Saints fans. I think we need 4 positions this window. We need a winger who can play pretty left or right, a striker because we just don't score goals at all. We need an 8 or a 10, someone who could probably play as a 10 in a 4-2-3-1 or an 8 in a 4-3-3. Just give us a bit of balance. Then we probably need a centre back as well. But the problem is, I just don't think a lot of players or maybe the players or the fans are agreeing a lot with what's going on with Nathan Jones at the moment. We don't have a clue what he wants to do, whether he wants to play a 3 at the back or 4 at the back. He keeps going, I can play so many formations, blah, blah. But what we need right now is consistency, and we can't keep chopping and changing. We need something that we're going to work on and keep working on to get better. So it's going to be a difficult situation, but I think if we can get signings out, get this out of our mess, and then we need to really focus on the summer, whether that's in the Premier League or in the Championship.
So, obviously, I mean, you're going to need players, as you've said. How much money do you think Southampton need to spend, and how much money do you think Southampton are willing to spend? Because, as we said in the pre-chat, I think Southampton were a bit cheap bringing Nathan Jones in. On a professional basis, I'm sure that Nathan Jones has his pros, and I'm sure that he will bring some good attributes to Southampton. But from what I've seen, I think he's been out of his depth at most of the clubs that he's managed. And for me at the moment, I don't think he was really fully in depth at Luton. I think he was doing an okay job. But to be completely honest, I think that Southampton was a bit of a big jump for him. And as someone rightly says, Chris here as well, talking more on the pitch, obviously missing Armando Broja from last year. It's a big loss, obviously trying to get a bit more game time at Chelsea, which I can see him doing when he comes back from his injury. So, I think I'm going to ask you that question. How much do you need to spend maybe to replace a player like Broja? And do you think the club are going to be willing to spend the amount that you are going to quote?
Well, I think if the club want to get him out, want to get us out this situation that we're in, we're going to have to spend a bit. And the players that we've been linked at so far with their prices, I'd say probably 40 million. Maybe we need to spend, and I think they'd be willing to spend maybe 30, 40, which I'm down with as long as they get it in the right areas. I don't want them to keep going, he's going to be an exciting talent in the future. No, we don't need future. We need now. We have a lot of good players who are going to be good for the future and who are good now. Problem is, they're letting the team and the rest of them down. So it's like, what do the club do? Are they going to bring in experience to get us out of this crap? Then in the future, then think now we can sign a bit of young players, but it's what they're willing to do and what they're willing to do to get out of this situation. The new owners have been in for a year from today, I'm pretty sure. So a lot of fans have been rating their yearly thing and be like, what are they willing to do to get this out of our mess? And hopefully they'll spend a bit of money because they did in the summer. I just don't think we did it the right way, and I don't think we did it on the right players. So we know they're willing to spend. It's just whether our recruitment system or scouting team can get the right players in, which they haven't really done in the summer. They've got a few good players in, just not the players we need to take us on to this next level because they're really struggling to adapt to the Premier League, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think your strategy of Southampton. I think it's a strategy used in terms of the buying young, kind of selling, develop them a bit. I think it's used a lot by clubs like Benfica, a lot of Portuguese clubs, Leipzig, Salzburg, and obviously Chelsea are going to try and do something, except they're in a position where they've got a full first team and they can afford to develop players like that. But for lower league clubs in the Premier League and definitely Championship and below, it's really hard to do that because a player can develop in the Championship from a young age and then go on to succeed. Whereas in the Premier, you're not going to get as much game time. And even in the Championship, it can still be difficult. So I think that when it comes to Southampton's strategy, it's annoying because you will have some great talents coming through that system. You've already had it. Obviously, I know that he's not a product of your academy necessarily, but Virgil van Dijk, Sadio Mane, just to name a couple, and you have brought in some good players. But the problem is, it's just, are they good enough this year? And I think in some aspects that might be Forest's problem, but I don't think it's their main concern because we have brought in a couple, the likes of Brandon Aguilera, who's young and he's got a good future ahead of him, and a couple of younger guys who've not really on the scene yet. But at the same time, we've got a good sprinkle of first teamers, and we're going to add to that in January. And I think we're in the same boat where we're going to have to spend 30 or 40 million. But I do feel that with Steve Cooper, in contrast to Nathan Jones, he has a clear-cut strategy of what he wants. We started at 5 at the back this season, or the 3 centre-backs, 2 wing-backs, and good defensive performance against Newcastle. Obviously lost 2-0. I mean, you weren't going to stop them. But looking back now, that was actually a good performance. And then it just got pulled apart with injuries and with, the lack of experience against Prem sides. So we had to switch to that back 4. But for Nathan Jones to say, as you say, he can keep switching formations, I don't believe in the Premier League you can just keep doing that. You have to have a clear strategy of what you want to do and just be able to slightly implement it bit by bit, because it makes it really difficult to keep chopping and changing, especially when you're at the bottom of the table. So looking ahead of tomorrow then, I mean, what changes do you see being made to the formation perhaps, or the squad that's going to be lining up? What do you see changing?
I mean, we finished the second half. We started with a 4-2-3-1 against Fulham, and it really helped us well. And I think he'll definitely stick with that. Looking at the game, I think he definitely will. So we did play a lot better. We did look a lot better defensively. I think he'll make a couple of changes. Maybe bring in Stuart Armstrong for Joe Aribo. I think he'll start front 4 of El Yunusi on the right, Edozie on the left, then Stu in the middle as a 10, and probably Che up front. I think Lavia might come in, but it depends how fit he is. He only played 10 minutes the other day, and he's only had a few training sessions. So it's whether he trusts Maitland-Niles to play in that DM role, or he's going to risk Lavia bringing in. So I think if Maitland-Niles starts, then I think we'll see Perrault at left back. If Lavia starts, then I think maybe we'll see Walker Peters at left back, Maitland-Niles at right back. But I think he will definitely go to 4-2-3-1. It's just what players he thinks are fit enough to play, or what players he wants to play in that system.
So we kind of spoke about a couple of players that we thought would be interesting, and I looked from a Southampton recruitment perspective point of view, to name a couple of guys. And I will just, in a brief moment, I'm just going to say hello and a good new year as well to everybody listening. I hope you're all doing great. Swin, great to speak to you. Obviously, we had a great time in Valencia not all that long ago. I wish I was back there. It's freezing. Kev, good to see you. Rivers, everybody joining. Simon Mills, the True Red. Hope you're doing well. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. And if you can subscribe, that'd be even better. Brad Dad, hope you're doing good, my friend. Good to see you as well on Sunday. Eve, got one of your calendars as well. Amazing work. So back to the point about recruitment. We were talking about a forward that I think has caught a lot of attention in the Premier League as well as the Championship. And that was Gaia Karish from Coventry, who has had a good season so far. I don't know how much they're really going to want to sell him for, because obviously he's a talent. He's a talent. Whether they are willing to sell him, I don't think they'll have a choice, being where they are in the league. He's 24. He's this season, the Championship stats so far for him, 25 games and 12 goals and 1 assist. That's this season. So he's been impressive. 25 games, 12 goals, 1 assist in 20, as I say, 25. And then last season, 45 games altogether, 17 goals, 5 assists. So he's doing really well. He's getting probably maybe like a goal contribution every 2 games or so, if I've got that right. So pretty prolific, consistent. Would he be somebody that Southampton would potentially look at in January? Would you add him to your squad?
I think I'd definitely like him, but the problem is I think a lot of fans will go against that sort of process. We've had difficulty with when we signed strikers from the Championship and never worked out. Che Adams we brought for 15 million, has already worked out as we liked it. Adam Armstrong for 15 million hasn't really worked out. We liked it, so I don't think a lot of fans would be happy if we went with another Championship striker because it hasn't really worked for us. But I do think he's a good player, good striker. I find it crazy how Brighton need a goal scorer and they sell him to Coventry, which I find crazy. But I think the fans and I think certainly myself would probably rather go for a European striker. But if he comes in, and I'll back it. But there's no interest as of now, and I think if we're going to get someone like him in, it's going to have to be now rather than at the end of the window because we just can't afford to keep every day that ticks on. We can't afford to not have a striker in.
And Miroslav Orsic was a name that you mentioned earlier, wasn't it? In the pre-match again, that you had heard had been linked or that there'd be something. I mean, obviously Forest were linked with him in the summer. I don't think we are going to go with him. I know that he's a bit more senior, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's 30. He's 30,
yeah.
But a lot of links today we're pretty close to signing him. He's saying he wants to come, and the deal could be wrapped up as soon as next week of what I've heard. So they've moved quick with it, and if it gets in, I like it. I think Burnley were interested in last January, and I don't think he wanted to go to Burnley, but a lot of links in Croatia are saying that he wants to come and do it. I think he wants to leave now, and I think he's probably only got a few years left in him. If we can keep him for a year and a bit or so, or I think if we get him in 6 months and we go down, and I think he's going to have some type of clause to like Premier League club that can buy him. But I think get him in because we've got nothing to lose.
I mean, even if you only had him for 12 months, realistically, if you got out of that bottom 3 and took 17th, I think any Southampton fan would take that, which is quite scary to think, considering, Southampton have had, as someone rightfully mentioned earlier, Graziano Pella, Dusan Tadic, Sadio Mane. You've had such brilliant players. You've had good results. You've had so many good players, and the club has sold them on. And I think Van Dijk, Mane, Tadic, and Pella were always going to outgrow the clubs. I'm a bit sad at the way that Pella ended up going in his career because I thought he had huge potential to go to Premier League.
I think it's not just I think it's not just them leaving. I think it's when Koeman left as well to go to Everton. I think a lot of the fans were really annoyed with that, considering we finished 6th or in the Prem. We were 4 points off. No, was it 3 or 4 points off Champions League that season? And he goes to Everton, who are mid-table, and you think you're building something special here. The players absolutely love you. We're in Europa League, and you leave for Everton, and you think he's just gone for the money, and he kind of ruined his reputation there. And I think ever since he left, the club's kind of gone to pot really, and we've signed poor managers. Even though I love Ralph, and I think he was screwed with the previous owners we had because we didn't really spend much money, and he had to sell his best players to basically recruit. And I think he did a great job. I just don't think the results helped him in the way we lost games. But bringing in Nathan Jones is if you're going to sack Ralph, at least improve the manager, not downgrade, if you get what I mean. We've gone someone who's got Leipzig second in the Bundesliga in their first season with it. It's then you go to Nathan Jones, who's, yes, I understand he's worked on a low budget and kind of works on youth and stuff like that, but that Luton team's pretty experienced of what I know. Yeah. So it's has he really worked with young players? No. Did I think we'd be more stable under him with defensively? Yes. Have we been? No. But it's it's only been 3 matches, but then he did have a whole mini pre-season to work with those players, and only 2 players went to the World Cup, and they were back, and they both got knocked out in the group stages. So it's he did have a long time to work on the squad. So it's I think if we win tomorrow, it's different.
But yeah, potentially.
don't know.
And I think that when it comes to Nathan Jones, it's whether he aligns with your long-term strategy, the way you deal with things, and if he can develop quite as well as Ralph did. And I thought it was a bit disappointing, really, the way it ended with him. Because if he had been replaced
definitely.
and I know that some fans wanted Poch. I know that was a thing that was being talked about. I don't think you were ever.
It's very unrealistic, though. We haven't got
Yeah.
that sort of pull that we used to, and I don't think any. The problem is, I don't know who we would have gone for. You know what I mean? But Nathan Jones was on none of our lists, and that's the problem. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know who would have gone for, but
I'm surprised because I thought
something that never happened.
The manager of Ostersunds would have suited you really well. Knutson, great manager.
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
I think I was saying to a lot of people, like, if we were to get a championship manager like we did, I know Swansea are a bit of a predicament, but I really like Russell Martin. So I know Swansea. The problem with Swansea is they dominate the ball, and I think they play beautiful football. They just can't put it in the back of the net. I think maybe someone like him would have suited us, because we can be a possession side. We have got players to keep that sort of possession. The problem is defensively, and we're practically Swansea with no possession. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously, if Steve Cooper didn't get signed his contract at Forest, and if he had got sacked, like I think many fans, such as myself, at one point thought, I think that he would have suited the club well. But I'm very glad that he is.
I'd have definitely loved Steve Cooper. I really like him. I think he's a brilliant manager. Fantastic.
Well, I hope he's not.
He showed it with Swansea as well.
I want him to stay. I want him to stay at Forest. So I love you more, Steve, than this guy, than Liam does. But kind of the last kind of thoughts I wanted to have before I go on to a little bit about Forest transfer chat, which I will do after I've spoken to Liam. I'm not going to give my score prediction until the day because I'm a bit superstitious about that. What are your thoughts tomorrow? Any idea on a potential score prediction you could give us? Is it going to be a complete domination? Because I don't think it will be by either side, to be honest. But I don't see it being a tight game either. So how do you see it? I see it
being very. I think it could be one of those games where it's like 2-2 or 3-3. But I'm like, I don't want that game at all. I'd rather a 0-0 than a 3-3. You get what I mean? I can't have my emotions coming out my heart. You get what I mean? So it's like, I don't honestly, man. I have zero clue what's going on. The team will probably affect my mood going into the game. If it comes out of a positive team, then I'll be positive. But tell you what, I think we need it. I'll just go hand my heart. I'll go 2-1 Saints.
Oof. Okay.
But that's a honest. My head says 1-0 Forest. My heart says 2-1 Saints.
It takes a lot to say that. It takes a lot. I'll give you that one. And you know what? I respect you for that. So, Liam, I'd like to just thank you so much for coming and talking on DoreOnTour. It's been great to chat to you.
Thank you very much, man. It's been lovely.
May the best team win tomorrow. I'm not going to say
good luck for the rest of the season as well. Good luck tomorrow as well. So.
And you. Much appreciated, my friend. That was Liam. There you go, Liam Whitehorn, the Southampton fan. Thank you for joining us, Liam. Take care, my friend. And what a great guy he is. And I wish Southampton all the best in their season. And obviously Forest and Southampton, they've got a real foundation to go and do something and really turn the page over and hit a new kind of a new run of form this season. You've got big games coming up for I think Forest in specific. They've got a run of games where you can definitely get points, and the game at Chelsea for me showed you can be getting points against teams even with the good players that they have. So it's best not to overestimate a team before you face them. It's whoever's best on the night, whoever's more ready for it, and whoever's got the best attitude. So I'm going to talk a bit about Forest transfers, and feel free to call in as Dora has rightfully put in. There is a chat link if you want to phone in the chat, so feel free to do so. Thank you, Rockabilly Gardener. Really appreciate it. My time away from YouTube is for a few professional reasons, but I'll be coming back at some point. You all will be pleased to know. So yeah, thank you for that. Sam, let's get down to this because Roma's Karsdorp. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a moment there. I've not heard a lot about him personally. I've heard more about Becker because, and by the way, I really do rate Becker. Karsdorp is right back, so I don't really know if we'd necessarily need him that much. But potentially. But I think Becker would be someone that I am a bit more interested in. he's lightning fast. He's got plenty of goals and assists to look for, and I do think he could be Prem standard. So it's whether Union Berlin are how much they're going to want for him. I don't know. I would like to say around the 10 million mark, but you can never really know in this market. So he's 27, 28, I believe. So I think he'd be a good transfer for Forest. But the real question is whether we need him exactly. And Sam Surridge, it's a big talking point as well, because I really like Sam Surridge and I want to put this out there. I don't think there is actually many people in the Forest fan base that really don't rate Sam Surridge or don't like him. I think as a person, he's brilliant. I think he's got a great attitude. I think he cares about the fans deeply. I think he cares about the club and Steve Cooper deeply. And I think he cares about his performance on the pitch deeply. And I think his attitude is just in the right place. And it's really gutting to have seen him not get as much game time as I think he deserves, given his performances last season and also how he has been when he comes on in the rarity in the Premier League. So I like Sam. I just think he's that kind of rare player that you get at a football club that doesn't say a lot. They're not this huge social media presence. You know, they're not this not a loudmouth, because I don't think that's a nice word to use. I don't think they're a big social person, but just someone that just is quite quiet, a bit shy, and just gets on with it. And there's nothing wrong with getting on with it and not being shy. But the point being is he doesn't say a lot. And I think he just lets his performance just speak on the pitch. And I really like that about him. I just like the way that he conducts himself, and just a good role model, I think, to have around other players, albeit he's only still a young guy. But, you know, for other young guys coming through the youth system and also just through the team in general, Brandon Aguilera, to name a player, you know, and the other younger lads there. It's just good to have around. And he's clinical. He's a proven goal scorer for Forest. And I do think he'd do it in the Prem. It's just a shame he's not going to get more time. And it's hard because you do have to balance that with Awoniyi also getting time as well, because you've got to remember we spent 17.5 million on Awoniyi, and, you know, he's our top scorer. So to not give him game time, I would say, is not criminal, but it's really difficult. So you've got to make that balance. And I really like Sam. And I will just say actually now that if Sam does go on loan, which I hate the idea of, because I want him to stay with us. And I'm sure that I speak for a lot of Forest fans, and maybe I don't know, but I'd like him to stay with us because I do believe he's a really good player. But if he's going to go on loan, I would say that if Burnley want to take him, then I'm happy with that. If Sunderland wants to take him because Sunderland are linked, I'd take that as well. I think Sunderland it's got a fantastic ground, fantastic atmosphere, brilliant fans. They're going to be back in the Prem in the next 5 or so years for sure. It's a bounce for them. You know, they're on a really tough couple of years since being relegated from the Premier League, you know, and obviously the Coleman era, and it was really difficult for Sunderland. But I think they're going to come back, and if Sam's part of that on loan, then good for him. And I think he'd get a lot of game time there. They've sent Ellis Sims back to Everton. He got recalled by Everton. So for me, it would make sense for him to go to a team like Sunderland. Obviously, if Diallo's recalled by United as well, Sunderland are going to be looking to bolster that attacking force. So maybe Surridge is part of that. Maybe he's part of Burnley. Whatever he wants to be part of, I think you've got two good sides, two bouncing sides, two sides that are in good form, that I'd be happy for him to go to and get game time, as long as they're treating him well. But I think Sonny D rightfully put, I think Sunderland probably the best out of the two. But that being said, Burnley's still a great side to go to. And if he does get victory with Burnley, then, you know, maybe come back to Forest and do it with us. But at the same time, I'd like to see him do it with us now, because I think he's done having the glory bit and then going and doing it again in the Prem, because he got us promoted. He was a big part in us getting promoted in that second half of the season. So I really like him, as I say, and for 2.5 million, what we paid for him, and for what people called a panic buy or a scattergun approach in that January window, for him then to go and really shut people up and do well. And maybe not Forest fans saying it, but fans of other clubs saying it. I think it was really important. And then obviously his performances on the pitch were just enough there. So forget bragging rights on social media. It's all about what they do on pitch. And he was someone that really shocked me, because I wasn't quite sure what he was going to be like as a player. But yeah, really shocked me, and I was just really happy for him. So I hope he stays. The reality of Prem football is harsh. It's brutal. It's unforgiving as well. So as much as I'd like to say let's keep him, Steve Cooper knows what he wants, and I can imagine that, and I think they do. I think they probably do maintain a really good professional relationship, as they will with every other player in the squad. And I'm sure there's no ill feeling, because at the end of the day, the Premier League, it's the club will change its strategy. It will change who wants to be, or who needs to be part of that strategy, and that coming together of a team that's going to try and get their way out of a hard relegation battle. So I think that it'd be nice to see Sam stay, but unfortunately, yeah, as I say, Premier League is brutal. The likelihood is Forest are going to bring in another striker, and I think they're going to spend another 20 million on that striker or that forward player in order to bring them in. So it's hard, but it would make sense, and it would be for him as a professional to go out on loan and get game time would be nice, and I would be more comfortable and at home seeing Sam getting game time than sitting on the bench or coming out of in his car at the end of the game having just ran around on the side of the pitch or just sat in the dugout, because I think there's a wasted talent there if that is the case. So I don't know the reason for him not playing. I can imagine that the most likely suggestion is that you've got to play a 1 year given the amount of money we spent, and maybe, obviously he's our top scorer and he's had good performances recently over at left wing, which is a different one we didn't expect. But yeah, and I like the idea of Sam coming on as the super sub that people mention, but at the same time, I think he deserves more. I do think he deserves more. So, it's super sub, of course, last season, big part in that, but I think he's got real potential to go out there and be that striker, that forward that a team needs, like Sunderland needs, and go and tear the league up a bit again. And I think he'd do that at Sunderland. So, it's Steve Cook. It's hard with Steve Cook because I really like him. I really do like him, and I know I can get slaughtered for that, but I'll stick up for that. I like Steve Cook. I think he's experienced. I think that people were too harsh on him at times. I don't believe he has the best pace or anything like that. But I do think he's a good defender, Steve Cook, and regardless, another good player to have around. I can't see him leaving in January. I don't think he will, but I think he still has something to add to Forest's team. I still think he does, and this is another thing as well. It's going to be really difficult for people like Steve to have that input at Forest because of the amount of centre backs we've got. And Beso, obviously, Baddy's gone now. Bolly, Cook, Worrell, McKenna, Niakate, who's coming back in the next 3 weeks or so. It's it really is tough, so tough. To break into that team, even for players that have been there last season and done it. It's going to be really difficult. Scarpa, he's going to come and change that front three. He's really going to he's going to push players. He's going to be there to kind of say, if I'm not starting in this starting 11, you best be on your best A game. If he is as good as he was in the friendlies, and he's going to be providing that kind of motivation for players to really work even harder. And I think it's important as well that with Scarpa, we don't jump the gun, because I think that Scarpa is a really good player from what I've seen of him at Palmeiras and also in the Forest friendlies, which I've been privileged to watch. Obviously, the one in Valencia, which was great. And he was fantastic. He provided real creativity, good vision. His set pieces were really impressive as well. But at the same time, he hasn't seen Premier League action in his career. He hasn't seen it with Forest. And friendlies are, of course, at times a time for experimenting in some aspects, and there's a potential that he might not be as impressive in the Premier League as he was in the friendly. But I'm not going to doubt him, and I actually think the opposite, and I think he will absolutely smash it in the Premier League. But I'm not going to jump the gun in these people that are saying, okay, so next time starting, I want Scarpa starting the next game. Because we haven't seen him play. why would you change the team that you have seen play for quite a few games? And yes, there's been blips in that time where we've had poor performances. But really, why would you want to change that side so much for a player that we haven't seen yet? I think a second half substitution or a late first half would be fine. I don't mind that. To introduce him and then maybe a bit of time at Blackpool as well. You know, I think the idea of Scarpa saving Forest or anything like that at this point is a bit of an overreaction. I think he's going to smash the league. I think he's going to bring great things with Forest. But I think in terms of, you know, everybody going, right, Scarpa's the first name in the starting 11 tomorrow, I think that's a bit too far yet. We'll wait and see. Not doubting him. I really think he'll do well. And I'm so impressed with the recruitment strategy to get him in. I think that's excellent. And it was a great move by the club. But yeah, you know, both on a financial level and an experience level, I think he adds that experience and knowledge. And he's got real good character and charisma about him as well. So, yeah, I like that side to a football player as well. The video of him doing a Rubik's Cube, I just thought was brilliant. I just like the humour he's got. Could we see Omar Richards go out on a loan then? I don't think so. I think that Omar will be out for another probably month and a half, two. He's had quite a big setback, unfortunately. So, you know, it's not a nice one to have. But yeah, he's had that big setback. Again, obviously, we saw his training, his personal development that he was doing out in Dubai. Really great work, obviously doing some shuttling and you know, just general ball work with some practitioners and stuff, which is good. Good to see that he's really kind of motivated to get his himself back into football again. Obviously, people saying that Niakate's, you know, injury prone as well. I mean, one major injury at the age of 27. I think you're doing pretty well. I wouldn't say that's injury prone. You know, and I think that it's disappointing from my perspective as me. You know, certainly not as a channel perspective, but as me maybe. That it's unfair for all this, the insults that are being put towards Niakate, saying, well, I think we should just sell him. I think it was terrible recruitment. Because at the end of the day, when we were doing okay defensively against Newcastle and Niakate bossed it at West Ham before he got injured, everybody was saying he was the best thing since sliced bread. So I don't know what more you want from him. He's injured. There's been a setback. He's had to have surgery on his hamstring. He was in crutches for a month or so, you know, and I don't know what more we can really do with that. It's unfortunate. And guys, look, you know, to spend 12.8 million plus on a player like that, I think we've got a bargain for him, really. And I think he's a great leader. And him and Bolly as centre-back partnership or vice versa, whatever you want to do, will be brilliant. You've got two clear leaders there with good experience, albeit Bolly the one with more experience. But Niakate will provide that injection of his experience as a captain in Germany. 26, 27 years old as well. He's young. So we need to just get behind him. It's not going to be easy for him mentally as well, because you don't want to get injured. He wants to play for Forest. He was so passionate on that pitch. I don't know how many players I've seen that are passionate, but one thing I'd really like to point out is how much I admire the passion of all the Forest lads going out on that pitch. Jesse Lingard turning up, obviously injured, cheering on the lads. You know, not standing sitting in the stands. He's going and sitting next to the lads in the dugout and really giving them some motivation. And Taiwo, every time he's running, smile on his face, you know, coming out to meet fans before the game, smile on his face again. And that really kind of made me feel warm, because it's nice to see that, even though we're a Prem side. And then to see, you know, as I say, players like Niakate, you know, just how passionate he is, the social media posts. I know it doesn't mean a lot to some people, but, you know, to know how much he cares about the club, I just find that so deeply important, and I really admire it. And I think that's a good attitude to have. So, and I'm not suggesting that people that don't post on social media aren't passionate, by the way, because most of the squad do. And even if they didn't, it wouldn't mean anything, and you shouldn't be offended by it. But I just really like it. I like the passion that they have. And for a lot of these younger lads, as well as Taiwo, I think it's their Premier League is their dream. You know, and I really do think they'll thrive. It will just come in time, and they're going to need confidence. So yeah, but to answer your question, the true red, I think Omar Richards will stay at Forest, continue his personal development, and if he doesn't play this season, in the latter half of the season, then I think that, yeah, as Grant Fellows rightly says, just getting him ready for next season, which isn't an issue because obviously Renan Loddy would have gone by then. Harry Toffolo, I don't know what his situation is, but he could potentially be a backup. And then Nico Williams a backup to Serge Aurier, or vice versa, should Serge Aurier stay on. So, yeah, look, I think that I think that we've got some brilliant players in that side, and I think it's the defensive, definitely the fullback positions are going to be really tough to get into for Omar. So I don't think that if he recovered next week and he was ready to play and he was at full fitness, I don't think he's getting in at the moment in front of the likes of Nico. Not Loddy either, because obviously, regardless of what you think of Loddy's performances recently, I think he had a good game against Chelsea that second half. Omar wouldn't get in first team yet. So, but yeah, I think they'll get him ready for next season, probably late this season as well. It's just unfortunate for him because I really rate him, but it's just one of them things, unfortunately. NFFC 1865. Hope you've been well. Hope you had a good Christmas. I had a great Christmas, actually. Thank you. And a good New Year. So thank you. And also to you as well. And also to all of you listening. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'm sorry that I missed it. Yeah, great. Watching Forest and Valencia just before Christmas was absolutely amazing. We spent 4 days in the worst apartment you could ever imagine. But we had the best time with some brilliant people. So a big shout out to Malcolm, Ian, Des, Swin, Savina, and everybody that went out. Billy, obviously Dore as well. Everybody that went out, great to see you. So yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts. I mean, obviously players that you want to bring in. I know that someone's asked me and obviously Chris, you raise a good point. Having that many centre backs is so difficult. And Cook for sure could get a loan somewhere, but yeah, it's really tough. And like I said, I want to talk about this because I don't want to make a move for Brereton Diaz in this transfer window. No, for me, I'm not about that. I think we need to move on from that. So that thing that we had with him. I think he's a good player. I think that he has a bright future ahead of him beyond Blackburn for sure. He's going to be bigger than that, in terms of the quality of the league that he's playing in. I think he'll go bigger, probably Spain, maybe to a club like, I don't know, Sevilla, Valencia's, those kind of clubs. But, I don't think Brereton Diaz, I think Gaio Keresh, as we mentioned earlier, is someone that I would certainly look at. But I don't know if he's what we need. I mean, Steve Cooper has said, we want a player or players that are going to fit in to your first team. They need to be first team ready. And that's going to come at a big cost. So as much as I'd like to say Gaio Keresh, Brereton Diaz, as mentioned, and other players, I think we're going to just look for Prem proven and just go for it straight away. And it's going to come at probably a vast cost, as many of you could guess. But at the end of the day, it's really tough of who we could bring in. Here you had a good taxi driver. We did. Thank you for taking us to Gatwick and back. And not Stansted, as Dore said, Gatwick. So thank you for that. Moussa Niakate is the future of the club. He's had a massive setback, but his quality, absolutely. And, he's had a hamstring injury previously a few years ago back at Mainz. So, it's something that he's had before. And unfortunately, it just wasn't quite the recovery that he had with his last injury. That was a little bit, well, as you can imagine, a smaller period of time to recover from a hamstring injury. And it's the same with Omar Richards. I know that people are saying, well, it's a long-term injury. Unfortunately, it's just become more prolonged just due to nothing of his own fault, I don't think. I just think it's unfortunate. Yeah, Niakate, Omar Richards, future of our club. I think that he's got bright future out at Forest, and wishing the best when he comes back in 3 weeks. It's going to be really, really tough to get in that back four. And for someone like Scott McKenna, I think has been good all season, and to only have a couple of mistakes, obviously the one at Bournemouth being the most mentionable, which I saw as one of the only mistakes in his real Forest career there. And I know that people just like to attack when it comes to players, but I don't really think Scott McKenna did much wrong. And I think he's a really good player. And again, another one of those that doesn't tout himself on social media so much, and he's just quite laid back and just focuses on football. So I really like Scott McKenna. and wish him all the best, really. I always see him out in town for some reason. So stop following me, Scott McKenna. You always see me in town. I always see him all the time in his car. I'd like Tammy Abraham, but time will tell. Again, look, I like Tammy Abraham as well, but it's a brutal reality that I don't think we'll get Tammy Abraham, because you don't go from Chelsea, who at the time were top 6, to Roma, who, under Jose Mourinho, one of the world's best managers. Obviously, I don't know how quite as good he is now, obviously, compared to how he was, perhaps a few years ago when he was managing Porto and Inter Milan. But Roma 7th place. They're not performing the greatest. But that being said, another win for them in their next game could take them up to 6th and then go from there. I do like Tammy Abraham a lot, and I think he's a good player. Chris says, he's like Bampi on ice, but I mean, if he's only scored 3 and Roma want a loan move, fair enough. I don't know how true that is, but whatever. Tammy Abraham potentially. He's, as I say, he's done okay in Italy. Not had a great season so far, and I think that partially could be down to a poor collective performance, because when they were collectively performing well, won I think the Europa Conference League last year, it was all looking okay for Tammy Abraham, but now it seems to have gone a bit downhill since. So potentially Tammy Abraham, potentially, but I think we need to look at buying someone, really. I mean, obviously, maybe financially it might actually be better to opt for having Tammy on loan, but looking at buying someone that's going to be at the club for a few years, someone that we can put into a 3 or 4 year contract, that's got a good amount of experience. But the problem is finding someone like that, and I can't bring a name to you just like that. And obviously, Liam mentioned earlier that Southampton were looking at Miroslav Orsic, who's a good player, lots of experience. Is he Prem ready? It's like, as a club now, as Forest, we've got to take a big gamble, because there is going to be players, I'm sure, that Steve Cooper and the club have shortlisted for, for potential strikers. And I'm sure Brereton Diaz is a name that's been mentioned at some point, but I don't see him as the replacement. Tammy Abraham, I think, may be unrealistic, but I don't know the situation with his relationship with Roma. So I think Tammy Abraham is a great player, and I wouldn't mind him at Forest. But would he come to a relegation battling side? I really don't know. Just a year after winning that European trophy, I really don't know. I can imagine there's something somewhere, a top 10 side somewhere where, albeit maybe not in the Premier League or what, but, and as Swin rightly says here, January transfer window is huge. It is huge. I don't think there's any cut about it, Swin. I think this is a huge transfer window for us, and it's going to be more important than the summer, because we're at a point now, as Steve Cooper said, where it's in our hands. It's in our hands now. The results went our way this evening. Everton losing, and obviously Brighton winning that game, and other results as well. So this is a time where we can turn it around. And as I say, everybody had the meltdown. Everybody had a meltdown after that United game. All I was seeing on the Facebook group chats is Forest are getting relegated. This is it. We're all over. It's finished. But there's things you can take away from that game where you go, these are certainly negative things that we didn't like and we need to change up for the next game against Chelsea, a hard test. But these are things that we did like, etc., etc. And I think poor marking cost us a couple of times in that game, and just poor passing, just like kind of schoolboy errors. I think nerves played a part in that. But at the same time, it's important that we just get behind the boys, and games like Man United, Arsenal, again, just games where people had an absolute meltdown. And there's no need, because at the end of the day, you will have tough games like that. And it's horrible to see us lose and not even score. But we come back. We have that point against Chelsea. And I don't know if you recall, but lost against Arsenal, drew against Brighton, beat Liverpool. You're playing Southampton tomorrow. I'd love to say that we can beat them. And I do think we've got everything in us to do so. So, yeah, I think we can turn it around. And I do actually think we can beat Southampton tomorrow. I'm not going to say a score prediction until tomorrow. But yeah, it's, as Chris says, a huge transfer window for us, rightfully, and also all of those teams that are in that bottom 3, 4, 5. But in terms of teams that I think would go down at this point in the season, I'm not going to say Forest. I'm going to try and be as honest as I can, whilst also, being passionate about the club I love. Everton, Southampton, and I don't know if I can say Wolves, because I think Wolves will come back and I think they'll be okay. I think they had an all right performance against United. Adama Traore was a real handful. And they've got a couple of players that are yet to really come into form, like Mateus Nunes. And I just want to say as well, Wolves have got a big window coming up for them, and then they've already spent money with Mateus Cunha. So, but I think Bournemouth could be one. And Chris, as I say that, you've said it as well. I think Bournemouth could be that team that goes down again, because it seems as though they've been really struggling. Obviously, that massive loss tonight, it's a huge setback. A couple of losses on the bounce now, and that's disappointing for them. So, they're going to be really worrying. And, and Everton, they're going to sack Lampard, I can imagine. I don't think it's any revelation to say they'll hire Dyche either. I think it'll be most likely, there's not a lot of managers out there. But he is a loan signing, but there's options to buy at the end. So, and don't get me wrong, his wages won't be cheap. So money is being spent there, 100%. So, and he's a good striker, by the way, Mateus Cunha. So, I think that Dyche definitely for Everton next. But we'll just have to wait and see, guys. I think we've got a really turbulent next 20 or so days coming up of this transfer window, 25, 26, 27 days, whatever, coming up. So make sure you stick with DoreOnTour, because he'll be bringing you all the news, and perhaps also I'll be bringing you a little bit of transfer news here and there, and also bringing you some of my post-match thoughts on the odd occasion as well. So do stick with us. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode. It's been really good to be back and obviously have that chat with Liam earlier from Southampton, as a Southampton fan, sorry. So a real privilege and an honour to be able to cover Dore this evening as he's ill. So wishing Dore a very speedy recovery. But I hope you're okay, Dore, and thank you for letting me run your channel this evening. I hope it was okay. But as I say, thank you most importantly to you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, share as well, because I think it'd be great. I think it's a good episode that people can rewatch. For sure over the next couple of days and weeks, and maybe next year, who knows, maybe if I'm seeing you from the future, we've stayed up. But thank you for listening. This was DoreOnTour, the preview for Nottingham Forest versus Southampton tomorrow evening. Thank you all very much for listening. Have a great night, Happy New Year, and goodbye.